Where does this masterpiece fall? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
That leads us over to the most important question that we ask on the show. Vince, where does Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse from 2018 rate on your Cageometer?
So this one's tough for me because Nick's in it for such a small amount of time. I kind of go back and forth on what I should give it. Originally, I was thinking an 8 because it's not a real Nic Cage. It's not a true Nic Cage film, right? He's not a main character, and he's not even really a secondary character, right? But because if I judging it as the film by itself, right? If I'm just taking it as the film, I mean, from the writing, directing, acting, the visuals, and the music, I mean, it and skewed in my own personal opinion because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. Like, this is a perfect film to me. So have to give it a 10, the film a 10. It sucks that he wasn't in it more. I wish he would have been. But I think we could probably all agree they used him perfectly in this film. He was peppered in, and his moments were great, and it didn't overshadow the rest of the film, which could easily have happened with any of the extra characters that were in it, right? So I'll give the film a 10. This is one of those films that I could watch again and again and again and again and never get bored of it. As far as Nick, I'll give him an 8. Again, if he had more time, this score could have gone up, or very well could have gone down. Who knows how his character is gonna play out in the live action series, if it's gonna be too much to handle, or if this was like the perfect dose. But I think he brought a lot to the performance, and it sounds like they allowed him to bring a lot to that performance. And I'll stick to what I always said. I think he has a great voice for voice acting for animated projects, and I really did enjoy his performance. He brought that character to life. Having known nothing about that character, he made me feel like this is a really well developed character that I probably should have been watching all this time. Yeah, he crushed it. I loved it. I loved how he did. They wrote him the best lines that they possibly could have written, and he nailed the performance on him. So it's got to give a lot of credit to that writing team, giving him grade A material to work with, and then him just knocking it out of the park. I'm glad he didn't go dog eat dog on us. But I did enjoy the way that he chose to portray this character, and obviously it was good enough to generate a live action show. So we'll see how that we'll see how that goes.
I really wonder like how he got attached to this movie. Like, was it they wanted Nicolas Cage, or he heard about it and he wanted to apply, and they wanted somebody who's doing like a noir voice Humphrey Bogart impression, and he was like, oh, I can do that, and he did it.
If I remember right from the behind the scenes, they kind of like put their like shooting for the moon choices, and Cage was the one that they chose. And we're just like, well, if we can get him, we're not gonna, but if we can get him, he would be great for this role. And then he was like, yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Which, you know,
so he's like, I got a weekend.
He loves Marvel and loves Spider-Man, and Spider-Man Noir is like, you know, a kind of a perfect vessel for him.
Oh yeah.
I do kind of wish that they were making the show animated, because I feel like it plays better as an animated story than a live action.
I mean, depending, we don't know what the tone is.
I'm very interested to see what the tone is and how. I mean, because they made that decision. It's got to be live action, so they have a vision in mind. And at this point, I trust them to pull it off. I know we talked a little bit about the sequel to this not being as perfect as this film, which again I think suffers because it's not a complete story. It was intended to always end on that cliffhanger, and unfortunately due to COVID and whatever other reasons, we're having a much longer delay in it being released. But I think if they had been released simultaneously or pretty damn close together, kind of like Matrix 2 and 3, I think we'd be more favorable, and I'm hoping we'll reflect back on that middle film a little more favorably after we see the conclusion of the story. But so I mean, I gotta trust their vision. I mean, they nailed this. They nailed this fucking movie. So 10 for
Yeah.
the film, 8 for our boy Nicholas Kim Coppola.
All right, Nigel, where does Into the Spider-Verse rate on your Cageometer?
I mean, I guess that's pretty clear. I don't know who needs to hear that this movie is great, because either you've already seen it and you know that, or you haven't and you're not interested in it for one reason or another. I guess for those people, you should watch this movie unless you completely hate everything about comic books or Spider-Man or just good movies or hand-drawn and CG animation or films that have lots of love and care put into the craft of the medium that they are creating. Then I guess avoid this movie. For everybody else, should see this movie because it is a 10 out of 10 in my opinion. It is fantastic across the board. It's not exactly a kids movie, but it's got animation that kids can enjoy, and all the way through adults. Everybody can enjoy this movie. There's something about it. I don't really have a lot of gripes. I feel like they're stupid nitpicks based on my own personal preferences. I guess if I had one, it would just be that I felt that the third act kind of came along really fast, and Miles just sort of like had his powers. We watch him progress through the movie of struggling with it and not really understanding this stuff, and then it just like flips a switch and now he's Spider-Man. But I guess that's the point that they were going for, is once he accepted that he could do it and believed in himself or whatever, made that choice to just be Spider-Man and take that leap of faith, then that was it. He had the powers. So it's thematic to it. So it's kind of a nitpick to complain about getting to that point taking too long. But yeah, we've hashed it. The casting across the board is perfect. All of the voice acting is fantastic. The writing of it is layered, much more nuanced than I thought. I've watched it 4 times almost. And you continue to discover stuff every time you watch it, and talk about it. There was stuff that came up while we were talking about it that I hadn't considered, that they specifically crafted into the film. So it's fantastic. It's gorgeous. It's action. I think it's the best Spider-Man movie ever made. I'm like Vince. I love Spider-Man. I find something to like in every single one of the live action Spider-Man movies that's made, even the ones people shit on. But this one is easily the best out of all of them. And I don't know if it's just, I don't know what, it's just a perfect concoction of, paying attention to the source material, stylizing it like a comic, but also doing its own thing, having its own feel and visual look to it. And because it's animated, you can get away with doing a lot of this stuff that would not be possible in live action. The part that blew my mind where they cut his frames down to 12 frames per second while Miles is like fumbling around with his powers. You couldn't do that in a live action thing. You could do it in animation, and I didn't even notice it. Subconsciously you do, but that's not something you would have intentionally even realized was possible in a film, let alone what they were doing to kind of use that visual medium in a way that you don't expect, and can't be done with a lot of live action stuff because its animation is incredible. So yeah, see it. It's an origin story, so it kind of falls into some of those trappings that get kind of cliched for it, but I think it does them in a fresh way that's entertaining. And especially if you've seen Spider-Man a billion times, Spider-Man origin story has been rehashed 3 times now, at least in live action. This is another spin on it that stands alone on its own. And it's easy to understand, even if you haven't read the comics, why Miles Morales is such a popular character, to the point that they brought him into the mainline Spider-Man universe, because he was originally intended to be, I think it was the Ultimate Universe Spider-Man in his own thing. And he was so popular and so endearing that they found a way to bring him over into the main one and work alongside the Peter Parker Spider-Man. Which is now extended through things like the Insomniac Spider-Man video games, which are also fantastic. So yeah, this movie gets it. It gets that secret sauce and that character, and it hits on all cylinders, or fires on all cylinders and hits all targets. It's 10 out of 10. There, I'm done gushing about it. As far as Cage's performance, it's hard to give him anything beyond an 8, which is what I will give him just right out the gate, because he's not in it as much. But that said, what we got from him, I think, is his best animated performance out of any of the animated stuff that we've watched. His best voice work performance. It ironically, compared to it stands up to something like, or alongside something like G-Force, where he is playing an actual character that you can stop thinking of as Nicolas Cage reading lines in a booth and just accept it for he's Spider-Man noir. In what little lines he's given, he delivers them in a way that feels suitable to that dimension, to that universe, whatever, to that character. It's different from all the other Spider-Man. It definitely feels like a Humphrey Bogart 1950 or 1930s, I guess, black and white cartoon version of Spider-Man. And he has one of the most emotional moments in the movie for me when Penny's little robot gets killed and he comes over to comfort her and he just says something like, are you okay? And the way he says it feels so fatherly and comforting and mentor. And then he's like, come on, let's go. And he like picks her up or helps her get up and stuff. It's not like he's trying to coddle her or anything. He's just checking in on her and he knows that, I don't know. It makes me tear up just thinking about it. Just the way he says it.
Same with that moment where he says, I love you all at the, like right before he goes back to his universe. Like the way that he says it is just so impactful in that moment. That like, it almost kind of takes you out because you're like, God damn, that was like, so
it's
like emotionally impactful in that moment where it's like, they're kind of making jokes at the same time. But like, that's where this movie really like succeeds for me is like, they have that emotion, but they also have the jokes at the same time. It's like, you know, how Renfield just had the jokes and shit all over the emotion.
Right.
It was, you know, it's the opposite here where it's like they can do both. You can do both at the same time and find that balance. Yeah.
And they were definitely, he had heartfelt deliveries across the board, whether he's trying to ham it up and be the funny, you know, making noir jokes or those small little emotional moments that he gets. He dialed in and he did it. And I don't know if, again, we always talk about this. Was it a Nic Cage thing? Was it a voice direction thing? Was it kind of meet in the middle of both? Either way, whatever it was a secret sauce got him to nail this character. So like I said, 8 out of 10, I would give it more just based on the fact that what he gave us was almost perfect, but there's just not enough to tell if to give it a higher score, you know. Maybe if he had been, I mean, he's like a tertiary character at best in it. If he'd been a secondary supporting character or something, you know, on the lines of the Peter B. Parker that we got, there'd be more to work with. But for what we got, I think that's about as high as I can give it. And it was still a great performance.
By the way, just wanted to mention it that apparently Penny Parker was supposed to die originally in the when they were writing it. They were going to have her die in that scene, but they were like, "This is way too heavy for this kids movie," so they just had the robot die, and then of course you see
which
her
is
repair,
itself is emotional because it's like you know her dad built the robot and her dad's dead, so that's her last connection. But the spider's fine, so it's like you know you get that kind of hopeful. All right, we can rebuild and she'll be okay. But, yeah. I just love that interaction between her and him, and I think Spider Ham comes over to help her too. Where it's just like, you know, they all know it, they all get it, it's lost, but then they're there for each other, but they still have a job to do, so they get back to it.
All right, on my Cageometer, you know, obviously, I love this movie. I think it's a masterpiece. Like you guys said, it's the best Spider-Man film, in my opinion. And there have been some great Spider-Man films, but this one just blows it away. It's just amazing. Like I said, like the emotional scenes are just so well done and so well like crafted, and they let things breathe to a point where it's like it doesn't stick for too long, but it sticks long enough to really like make an impact. I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on Aaron. I feel like they kind of bypassed him pretty quickly. But you know, there's only so much time you have in these films. Yeah. And like realistically, he wouldn't have had very much time with Aaron before the cops showed up. So, you know, it's kind of like, you know, he has to move on. And then I kind of agree with Nigel where it's like, feels like he gets his powers a little too quickly, but you know, there's, like you said, you know, it's kind of the leap of faith. He has to take that moment and be like, no, I am Spider-Man. Fuck it. I'm going to do it, you know? And then he does, and he struggles with it for a minute, but then he starts to get it. And once he does, he realizes like he finds that confidence and becomes Spider-Man in that moment, which is a great moment. I feel like that's the biggest moment of the whole film is like when he really realizes he is Spider-Man. going down the list, like direction from the 3 directors is incredible. The editing is amazing. The music's incredible. The visuals are just stunning. Absolutely gorgeous. I hope that they're able to do Beyond the Spider-Verse the way that they want to and aren't pushed to complete it quickly just to, make Sony a ton of money, because obviously they care about the craft, and they really took their time on this film, and it shows, and it's perfect. I don't think Across the Spider-Verse is as dialed in as this one, and I feel like it's studio interference, and that's the problem with these things is like once Sony gets involved, they kind of take the reins and screw it up. They can't get out of their own way. But thank God they got out of the way for this first one, and were able to give us this amazing film. As far as Cage, I'll agree, echo what you guys said. I can't give him higher than an 8, so I'll just go with an 8. He's great in all of his little. I mean, he's only has like 8 lines, I swear. Kind of the same as like with Teen Titans, where it's like he just showed up for a second, but the moments are so much better and so much more impactful, and are just so well crafted and acted by Cage in those scenes where he does show up that I wish we could have gotten more of him. But like you said, I feel like we got just the perfect amount. It's like, you don't want to add too much salt to the recipe. Too much Cage might have taken us out, might have been too goofy. But like his scenes are perfect. And he feels like a noir detective who came from the 30s, and like, and like you said, he has that like fatherly feel to him. And I don't know really much about Spider-Man Noir, if he is a father in that story, but that would be kind of a cool new angle to the character of Spider-Man, is like having him be a father who's like looking after his kids and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, yeah, I think he's great, and I hope that he comes back in Beyond the Spider-Verse, and we can do a Beyond the Spider-Verse episode where maybe we do like a little Across the Spider-Verse recap, and then we can do another one of these, and hopefully it concludes in a satisfying way that Across the Spider-Verse didn't conclude. But I feel like they're going to stick to landing. These guys clearly know what they're doing. And I think that's why they're taking more time on it than they originally were going to.